ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على ختم الأنبياء وإمام الأتقياء سيدنا ونبينا محمد خير البرية وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Alhamdulillah, in our lessons on Imam al-Birgivi's Tariqa al-Muhammadiyya, this great manual on the prophetic path, this great manual on Taqwa, we've been looking at the section on acquiring Taqwa, and there we've been looking at the blameworthy quality of riya or insincerity. And with respect to insincerity, we looked at what is insincerity or showing off being the active insincerity, and insincerity being either to act for the sake of other than Allah, this is a wider definition, or insincerity is seeking any kind of worldly gain from next worldly actions, and that is the specifically impermissible insincerity. So we looked at what insincerity is, etc. Now we've been looking at the 5 expressions of insincerity. So last lesson we looked at how insincerity can be expressed in one's appearance, in one's physical appearance, both religiously, like lengthening beard, using kuhul, and these kinds of acts related to physical appearance. And we also looked at dress, both worldly expression, both religious expressions of that and worldly. And this is why one comes to the realization that becoming religious is not a simple matter. That if one is not, alhamdulillah, if one is not careful, right, bad religiosity could end up making someone a worse person than they started off with before they were quote unquote religious. Why would that be? Why would that be? Any thoughts? Omar? Why would bad religiosity make someone a worse person? Because it could make them insincere in religious matters, right? Because worldly insincerity, what is its ruling? Right? If we show off in worldly affairs, in worldly things, what is the ruling? Yeah, it's not haram. You show off about your car, you show off about your house, you show off about your fancy new jacket or jilbab, or jilbab is a little more tricky, but you show off about your new scarf, this and that. In purely worldly matters, we would say it is dangerous. It's dangerous. Why is it dangerous? So it's not just fine because it leads to grave harm. It leads to grave harm. However, it is not inherently sinful. Right? It is not inherently sinful. It's khatir, it's dangerous. But someone starts, quote unquote, getting religious, but now they're showing off in their appearance. They're showing off in their dress. They're showing off in their conduct in religious matters. This is nothing short of ruin, right? Nothing short of ruin. So yes, you started doing more religious good deeds, but suddenly your worldly showing off translates to religious showing off. Because when you showed off about your car, did you commit a sin? Were you sinning? Your neighbor got a car, you got a better car. Beat that. Your neighbor got a fancy set of custom-made, bespoke, suit. You got a fancier bespoke suit. Was that sinful? In itself, not. But this was dangerous because it can lead to other qualities, right? That's what we say. We would not say it's permissible. We'd say it's khatir, it's dangerous. And it inevitably leads to sin, immediate or later, right? But that same person, Uncle Jamil, who'd show off about his new Tesla and then show off about their fancy home, they put up pictures of, they have, big house and big car and big wife or big husband and big porch and big belly and big everything. None of that is sinful. It's dangerous. But then Uncle Jamil gets religious. They do the same thing they did in the worldly sphere, in the religious sphere. Lengthening your beard to show off, major sin, because that's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Your dress, putting on the nicest kufi in the world. This is sacred territory, because that's the sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ. Right? So appearance has consequences. Dress has consequences. Especially in the religious sphere, but also in the worldly sphere, because it is the worldly that seeps in to the religious. So we talked about that expression. Insincerity is also manifest with respect to one's speech. Right? So قال الإمام البرجفي رحمه الله تعالى والثالث القول كالوعظ والنطق بالحكمة. Insincerity in speech, right? Speaking for other than Allah. You could be speaking about religious matters, right? Again, anything to do with religion, this is sacred territory. But this is the hima of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The religious, that's why, as Shaykh Waliullah Dahlawi says, إِنَّ مَبْنَ الشَّرَائِعَ عَلَى التَّعْظِيمِ. The basis of all divine guidance, religious guidance and teachings is ta'zeem, veneration. And matters of religion, this is how the Creator has called His creation to conduct themselves. Right? That is sacred territory. So if you don't approach it with sincerity, you're in danger. You got a siwak, why? Because someone picked up a siwak, it's a flimsy siwak, you Google, best siwak in the world, best tooth stick. So I'll show them who's wearing the best. You got a toothstick with a fancy thing to show off. Really? For you to go and just commit a minor sin is less grave than showing off in religious matters. Committing a minor sin is, don't ever deem any sin to be small. But this is, inna himallahi maharimu. Right? The sanctuary of Allah are His limits. So, from that is wa'adh, is admonition. Right? And this is something that we have to remind ourselves, first and foremost, people who are in a situation of teaching or guiding people, right? That any word said in matters of religion for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be wabal, will be regret and remorse and a disaster for the person on the day of resurrection. Because this is the hima of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah has a book called إعلام الموقعين عن رب العالمين. It's a large work on the principles of fatwa, has many good points and many problematic points, but that truly the sanctuary of Allah, is his limits. So when the book title is إعلام الموقعين, informing those who sign off on the behalf of the Lord of the worlds. That when someone gives a religious answer, they're saying, I am reasonably sure that this is what the command of Allah is regarding this matter, in a manner soundly understood. It's a serious matter. Similarly, when we're talking about, well, there's no such thing as Islam says. Islam does not speak. Islam is a state of submission. But when we speak that this is what the teachings of our religion are, we're saying this is what the Lord of the worlds, this is what we understand the Lord of the worlds accepting or being pleased with. Right? So it's a serious matter. Likewise, wa'adh, religious admonition. Right? And people's intentions get clouded. That, okay, you're streaming a series of lessons in Ramadan. Why are you doing it? You're doing post-Ramadan programming. Why are you doing it? So, well, it's an opportunity to catch attention, to do this, to do that. What's in it for Allah? Right? Which is why Imam al-Ghazali advises that as a general principle, avoid admonition. In Ayyuha al-Walad, he has a beautiful section, the two things to avoid, right, for people of knowledge, and this applies both to the ulama, people doing da'wah, but also people now, anybody with a smartphone can go online now, even with semi-dumb phone can go online. He said, avoid al-wa'adh wal-qasas. Avoid preaching, just giving reminders and so on. And avoid storytelling. Why? Because these are things that are very easily done to catch people's attention. That's why it's come, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يتخولنا بالموعظة. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to be very careful and selective of when he would admonish us. Most of the focus of our beloved Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم, when it came to to religious guidance, was al-ilm wal-irshad, knowledge and guidance. And one has to be very, very careful about it. And individuals need to be careful about that. Organizations have to be very careful. Our Ramadan campaign, our summer messaging, we have to make sure how we grab a share of the attention, this and that. This can be ruin. Right? You should do more refutations because you'll get more likes. وَوَجَدُوا مَا عَمِلُوا حَاضِرًا. They will find all that they did present. What you do awaits you on the day of resurrection. Right? And if it's not infused with sincerity, it is actions on the day of judgment will have form, they'll also have weight. And the weight of the actions is in accordance with sincerity. So when the actions are placed, they may look huge, but the sincerity makes them, lack of sincerity makes them empty, and they'll either shrivel and become tiny, or they'll disintegrate. And all that remains is مَبْتُغِيَ بِهِ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ, that which was done for the sake of Allah. So this is very important, right? And it doesn't have to be just formal. It doesn't have to be just formal. Formal how? That you are formally preaching or teaching. It can also be indirect expressions. You are sharing religious content. Why? You want to show that, I'm more religious than these guys. They post about food and these things. I post about religion. الناقل كالقائل. The one who relates is like the one who spoke. You didn't give the talk, but say, or you share an observation. Last night's closing talk by Shaykh Hamza was very profound. You didn't even listen to it, right? So moving. It's showing off. Because what you said, was it for Allah? Was your intention to benefit people? Say, of course, why else would I have shared it? No. Matters of religion, you cannot be sure. This is not a call not to share, not to call. But it requires, so wa'adh, admonition, and وَالنُّطْقِ بِالْحِكْمَةِ, and speaking words of wisdom, right? You quote things. This is why in general the mashayikh say that beware of those who speak of spiritual matters without authorization. Right? And spiritual matters, of course, are the most powerful of admonition and the deepest of wisdom. So people who are sharing things on, doesn't matter who it is. Everybody, we think we think good of all of Allah's creation. Right? But some really nice person is doing a series on the aphorisms of Ibn Ata'illah. But mashallah, he has a turban, he has gray hair, he has his own Facebook page. So I'll ask one simple question. Are they authorized to do this? If you're not authorized to do this, or if your teachers haven't given you parameters by which to engage in, and don't assume that, of course, people would have it. No. There's quack doctors out there, there's conspiracy theories, there's false news and false medicine and false analysis, there's false religion. And sometimes people who are foolishly well-meaning. So, beware of those things. Right? And safety there, right? Everyone's sharing their reflections. Right? One of the things to do is find scholars you trust, share their reflections. But when you do, at the moment of sharing, what do? Make your intention. Just make a habit. Right? Make an intention habit. Right? So be hip. Right? Have a habit of intention and purpose. Right? So be hip. Right? Have a habit of intention and purpose. Why am I doing this? Right? The three things. What, why, how. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. How is this for the sake of Allah? Make multiple intentions. It takes just a moment. And this gives meaning to life. Because purpose is light. Right? Al-qasd tablughu. Remain purposeful, said the Prophet ﷺ, and you shall attain. Okay. وَالْأَخْبَارِ وَالْآثَارِ, relating prophetic narrations and the sayings, of the early Muslims and the righteous. Everybody is posting quotes and this and that. Why is it? And the thing is, the issue isn't not to do it, but how to do it. إظهارا لغزارة العلم, just to manifest deep knowledge. ودلالة على شدة العناية بأحوال السلف, or to manifest how much you care about the states of the early Muslims. Right? Or just for attention. You want likes too. Right? I want to build a following, so you start posting quotes. The idea, it's not that you don't. إذا فتح الله لك بابا من من الطاعة فالزمه. If Allah opens a door of goodness, do it. So you're a Muslim artist. You say, you know what? I want to build some street cred with the religious crowd. Because before you're doing a few shady things. I'm going to start posting some Ibn Ata'illah quotes, some Abu Madian quotes, some Ghazali quotes, some Rumi quotes, or all the above quotes. I'm going to quote some hadith too, and you know what? Let me surprise everybody. I'll quote Quran. That's the easiest thing to quote. There's lots of translations online. Going to quote it. Why? Because then, I can penetrate the religious audience now. Before I was just, like in the sort of general religious audience. Now in the religious audience. That's not for Allah. If your intention is spreading good, inspiring people, calling to the khair, then yes. But work on your intention. وَتَحْرِيكِ الشَّفَتَيْن بِالذِّكْرِ, or moving one's lips with remembrance. Again, so you're sitting in front of, you're with righteous people, so you say, you know what, I want to give a good impression. So you're like, and if it's conscious, right, if it's explicitly for attention, you're in ruin. If it was sincerely for Allah, you're reminded. And sometimes you're with the righteous. You see this person's making dhikr. And you're like, I should make dhikr too. Should you make dhikr or not? Should you make dhikr or not? Yes. You have the inclination to make dhikr. Should you or should you not? So let's say you don't make dhikr regularly, but you go visit one of the righteous scholars. And you notice they're making so much dhikr. So I should make dhikr too. Should you do it or not? You should do it because you never leave the good for the sake of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Get any thought of doing good, right? وَافْعَلُوا الْخَيْرَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. And do the good so that you may attain felicity. Right? The good inclination is embraced and you work on being sincere. And that's it. If you try to out debate the devil, he will tear you down. Right? So you get a thought of doing good, do it after making the good intention. But don't, because leaving it for the sake of other than Allah is also insincerity. But be on guard. وَكَالْأَمْرِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهِي عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ بِمَشْهَدِ الْخَلْقِ, or commanding the good and forbidding the wrong in front of people. Right? وَإِظْهَارِ الْغَضَبِ لِلْمُنْكَرَاتِ, or to show your displeasure at wrong things. Why? So they notice. Right? Isn't that awful? Yeah, it is. But be careful. Right? وإظهار الأسف على مفارقة الناس على مقارفة الناس للمعاصي, or to show regret that people are engaging in sins. And of course, one error leads to another, because if you didn't act with purpose, talking about sins is sinful. Talking about how bad it is that people are doing wrong things, this is sinful, unless there's a clear purpose behind it. And we'll be looking at that when we come to the sins of speech. وَتَرْقِيقِ الصَّوْتِ بِقِرَاءَةِ الْقُرْآنِ, or to soften your voice with the recitation of the Qur'an. Many of the ulama, I say of the people most at risk of insincerity amongst the religious are the Qurra. Why? Because the Muslims love the Qur'an. The Muslims venerate the Qur'an. So people say, I've had students of knowledge say, Shaykh, what do you think about if I take 2 years to the Hifdh al-Qur'an, before I go back home. I said, why? He said, can help me get a job. Really? Or, said, Shaykh, what if I learn the maqamat? Why? Because like people like recitation. Now, if you do it to help creation connect to the book of their creator, if it's lillahi rabbil alameen, khayrukum man ta'allama al-Qur'ana wa 'allama. The best of you are those who learn the Qur'an and teach it. If it's for Allah. From that, the worst of people would be those who learn the Qur'an for other than Allah, or who teach the Qur'an for other than Allah. Guard your intentions. Guard your intention yourself. You're a nasheed artist. You've learned how to, you've got a good voice. Now you want to share some Qur'an. Why? To show off. And it can be, the Prophet ﷺ referred to it as being more subtle than the footfalls, the footsteps of a black ant on a moonless night, on a dark rock. Insincerity can be very subtle. To soften one's voice of the Qur'an. Many of the reciters, for example, in the Shami tradition, they deliberately stay far away from extra muhassinat sawtiyya, from extra ways of refining their voice. Some of them are wonderful munshids. When they recite the Qur'an, they recite it in a dignified manner, but without going beyond very restricted parameters of improving their voice. And one thing is to preserve their sincerity and for people to benefit. But if one does, one works on sincerity. One works on sincerity. Munshids are in danger for the same reason. Because when you're singing religious songs, this is a sacred act. And that's why you have to be very careful. If you listen to a qari, that's why safety is to be under the shadow of the people of Allah. Ask people, what are the Qur'an reciters that you recommend? Because we don't think ill of anybody. Even if they make errors, we say, Allahu a'lam, Allah knows better. Right? Right? They make an error, that which requires justice or redress. If we can be part of the justice or the redress, we do so. We don't judge intentions, etc. Kullu ibni Adam khata. All the children of Adam err. That's not your duty to judge motives and intent. But the Qurra are susceptible. Be careful whom you listen to, whom you promote. Be careful whom you learn Qur'an from. Be careful whom you send your children to learn Qur'an from, because this is a danger zone. It's a danger zone of insincerity. Potential insincerity. You cannot think ill of anybody because you don't know people's motives. Don't think, look, he's promoting his project, that's showing off. No, maybe they really care about spreading the good. Likewise, nasheed artists. Right? Like, if you ask the question, who is more odious in the sight of Allah? The nasheed artist who's singing spiritual songs purely for money, or the pop musician who is promoting vulgarity and filth? Which is worse? It's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. But especially like the non-Muslim artist, we don't hold them account for their actions before faith. They're engaging in harm. But they're engaging in harm in worldly matters. And it's grave, and few things are as harmful as that. But the nasheed artist who is singing just as a profession, without the intention for Allah, this is ruin. Because this is from the maharim of Allah. This is sacred territory. Right? So your words matter. So to soften one's voice with the Quran, لِيَدُلَّ بِذَلِكَ عَلَى الْحُزْنِ وَالْخَوْفِ, to indicate sorrow or fear through it. وَكَدُعَاءِ حِفْظِ الْقُرْآنِ وَالْحَدِيثِ, or كَدِّعَاءِ حِفْظِ الْقُرْآنِ وَالْحَدِيثِ, or to make claims that you've memorized Quran or Hadith. Right? Say, oh, Alhamdulillah, when I memorized the 40 Nawawi. Why did you say that? Of course, you don't question another. Right? Because if you think ill of another, that's su'u dhan, that's ill opinion. Maybe they're trying to encourage you. But, we need to be on guard about those who make claims about themselves. You cannot think ill of them, but they say, al-mudda'i man ashara ila nafsihi. The claimant is the one who keeps pointing to themselves. Right? I've been asked more than once, did Imam Zayd study with scholars? Because people say, I've been listening to him for so long, he never talks about his teachers. Because guess what? Sincere people rarely do, unless it's very purposeful. Unless it's very purposeful. Right? Because when you are praising your teacher, consciously or unconsciously, you're praising yourself. You're calling to yourself. So you have to be very, very careful. If I say that Shaykh Usman is a righteous scholar, mashallah, but then I say, I got to spend time with him, mashallah, he's so munawwar, then what happens? I am saying that I spent time with one of, like I'm really pointing to myself. So my praising Shaykh Usman is an indirect praise of myself. Beware. So we need to be extremely, extremely cautious, right, about our words. Right? And broadly, when it comes to sincerity, there are broadly 3 potential motives. Right? In anything religious, safety is if it's purely for Allah. Ruin is when it's clearly not for Allah. Like you did it. Let me post this video so I get more likes. And that's the reason. That's ruinous. It's a good deed that requires tawbah. And we all need to make collective tawbah. Right? But that's not all. There is the gray zone in the middle, which is when it's not clear why you did it. You didn't clearly do it to show off. You didn't clearly do it with sincerity. That gray zone requires utmost of caution. Stop. Make your intention. Be hip. Make a habit of intention and purpose. Okay? And then you'll be safe. And we see that in the hadith of the halal and the haram. The lawful is clear and the unlawful is clear. Between them are unclear matters that most do not know about, said the beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So whoever guards themselves from the unclear has safeguarded their religion and their honor. And there's unclear matters with respect to your intent. What is the prophetic command? Man ittaqa shubhat. Whoever guards themselves from the unclear. Any religious matter, you don't know exactly why you're doing it, pause. Make your intention, then act. If it's good, don't leave it. For the sake of Allah. Harrir niyatak. Refine your intent. وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ وَمَنْ يَقَعُ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ. Whoever falls into the unclear will inevitably fall into the haram. We know the hadith of the halal and the haram. And this was inculcated in children. Who is the narrator of the hadith? An-Nu'man ibn Bashir. He was around 5 when he heard this hadith. And he says, I heard from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? He heard it himself. And that itself has many lessons for us as parents, has lessons for us on the kind of maturity we need to be inculcating in our children, the concern for religion, the concern for the symbols of religion, the concern for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He heard it when he was 5 and he transmitted it. And of course it was said with other companions around, others narrated the hadith as well, but right? وَلِقَاءِ الشُّيُوخ, or to claim, I've met Shaykh so-and-so, I've met Shaykh so-and-so. Why are you putting the picture of such and such Shaykh there? Sometimes, people go visit the shuyukh and they don't want to, Shaykh, bidya tasawwar ma'ak. I want to take a picture with you. Again, safer. Could be sincere, could be insincere. There could be reward in sharing it. There could be sin. But there's a gray zone. Got to be careful. You have to be careful yourself and beware of those who operate in the gray zone. Where there's not a clear purpose why this is being shared. You can't think ill of them, but you got to be careful. And there are good reasons to share. You want to encourage people, you want to spread love of the ulama, etc. But what's your intention? Right? وَذِكْرِ مَا فَعَلَهُ مِنَ الطَّاعَاتِ, or to mention what one did of good deeds. وَالرَّدِّ عَلَى مَنْ يَرْوِي الْحَدِيثِ بِبَيَانِ خَلَلْ فِي نَقْلِهِ, or to refute those who relate hadith to show the errors in what they narrated. Is it genuinely for Allah? And if it was for Allah, couldn't you do it privately? Someone misquoted a hadith. And we'll look at the fiqh of commanding the good and forbidding the wrong, of giving advice, and we have many resources on that in Seekers. But the basis is that you correct someone, correct them privately. Why did you do it publicly? Right? أو صحته أو لفظه, or the soundness of the hadith or its words. ليعرف أنه بصير بالأحاديث, so it be known that you are adept at hadith. People know you simply as being specialized in the rational sciences or whatever. So you want to show, yeah, I know about hadith too. It's ruin. Right? So there's ruin, there's safety, but in the middle there's the gray area. The gray area is inevitably sinful too. Right? وَكَالْمُجَادَلَةِ عَلَى قَصْدِ إِفْحَامِ الْخَصْمِ, or to debate with the intention that you want to defeat the person you're debating in a religious matter. لِيُظْهِرَ لِلنَّاسِ قُوَّتَهُ, to show to people one's strength. فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالدِّينِ, in knowledge and religion. وَنَحْوِ ذَلِكَ, and the like of it. This is why very often you see senior ulama, what do? When they ask a religious question, they're very careful to only answer to the extent that the person needs and will benefit from. Simpletons think, well, subhanAllah, Shaykh so-and-so, they're very simple, they don't go into details and so on. If there's no need and clear benefit, they avoid it. Why? Because they're aware that they have hearts. And those hearts are given to corruption. That's why the mashayikh, even when they get to very high rank, they teach from books. Right? They teach from books. And they're very careful. They consult. They consult their seniors, they consult their peers, they even consult their juniors. Should I do this or should I do this? How should I do it? رضي الله تعالى عنه. وَرِيَاءُ أَهْلِ الدُّنْيَا, and the showing off in speech of worldly people, بِالْأَشْعَارِ وَالْأَمْثَالِ, is through poetry. The quoting poetry, quoting eloquent passages, وَإِظْهَارِ الْفَصَاحَةِ, and to manifest eloquence, وَالْبَلَاغَةِ, right? And this is showing off. And in worldly things, it's not sinful. I want to give killer presentations at work. Why? I want to impress people. People's careers ruin their religions. Why? Because people learn insincerity. You got to look good. If looking good and looking at God are, the sincere believer wants to look at God, right? They want to behold Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't want to be beheld, right? But this profession, impress, give a good impression, directly and indirectly. People, all these things, the self-help industry is how to become insincere. That's in worldly matters, it's not in itself sinful, but those same things, when you become religious, it's going to ruin you and cause you to be a source of grave harm to others. That's insincerity in speech, right? You want to show yourself as being an expert, right? My self-help program will make you do this, 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 and this. It's insincere. Ad-dinu nasiha. Do it with sincerity. But one of the things there is have restraint. In speech, the Prophet ﷺ told businessmen, told traders that don't overpraise your merchandise. Have some restraint. But also, have sincerity in it. Have sincerity in it. Because if you don't have sincerity in it, you are learning how to ruin yourself. And this reminder is first and foremost for myself, but for all of us, inshallah, that nothing harms us as much as our speech. So try to make it for the sake of Allah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this serve as a reminder first and foremost for me, and then for all of us. We're going to continue looking at the expressions of insincerity by looking at insincerity in actions, and then insincerity in dealings, and that will finish our look, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, at the expressions of sincerity. Right? And after that, the author is going to look at why are we insincere? What moves us to show off? Right? وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We ask Allah to grant us knowledge of our motives, and that we move. Right, as one of the poets says, وَلَوْلَا هَوَاكُمْ فِي الْحَشَى مَا تَحَرَّكْنَا. Were it not for yearning for you within us, we would not have moved. Right? Were it not for yearning for you deep within us, وَلَوْلَا هَوَاكُمْ فِي الْحَشَى مَا تَحَرَّكْنَا. Were it not for yearning for you deep within us, we would not have moved. Okay. حاول أن تجعل حركاتك وسكناتك لله رب العالمين. Try to make every movement and every rest for the sake of the Lord of the worlds, mighty and majestic. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.